thank you all for joining us today. I just want to quickly check if you guys can hear me. Just type in yes, no in the chat box and we're good to go. Okay, great. So yeah, like as always, we're going to be requesting all of you to ask the questions in the questions tab. At the end of Mr. Gautam's session, I will be asking the questions on your behalf, and then he will be answering all of them. Great, so I think we are good to go. We've got most of you coming in. I'm going to give a quick introduction about the series. So this is the 4th session of Leading in the Times of Crisis webinar series. As you all know, this initiative is started by Neoniche with the intention of getting business leaders to share their insights, their experiences, and how they are implementing strategies in these trying times. Today, our session is on financial strategies to survive and thrive during this pandemic. As we are in the 2nd month of the lockdown, it has become increasingly challenging for businesses to keep their financial wheels turning. The business has been brutal for many SMEs with their minimal cash reserves. We really want to kind of share trends and how can we, all deal with this together, and to share insights on this topic further. We are happy and honored to have with us today one of the best minds in the financial consulting space, Mr. Gautam Kapadi. He's a partner at CFO Bridge, which is into providing CFO services to the SME sector, focusing on improvement in financial governance, MIS reporting, cash flows, and compliance. He has a diversified exposure of driving the finance agenda and growth for companies in various stages of maturity across sectors such as FMCG, retail, manufacturing, fashion, packaging, travel, and many more. He's a chartered and cost accountant with more than 2 decades of work experience with reputed organizations such as Marico, Kaya, Raymond, Amway, Piramal's, out of which the last 13 years, he has been playing key leadership roles in all of these organizations. So thank you so much to Mr. Gautam for joining us today. I would request you to now take over the session and please address the audience.
So thanks, Shivani, for the introduction. So first of all, I'd like to thank Prateek and the team at Neoniche for organizing this webinar series, and that too at the right time. So we are going through uncertain times, and all of us have got many questions, but no clear answers. And there is no MBA program or degree which has prepared us for all of this. So the only way to respond in this environment is to learn from each other. So I've attended the previous sessions and found the same to be immensely helpful. I hope all of you will find today's webinar helpful as well as we learn from each other. So we all know that the lockdown in India has been very severe as compared to many countries, and we have managed to keep the count of cases under control in most parts of the country. However, as a result, while we don't have a healthcare crisis, we are already facing a financial crisis. I know there are many questions which entrepreneurs have about their business and specifically on finance. So we have divided this webinar into 2 parts. So in the first part, I shall be talking about some of the themes, trends, or questions which are put in webinars, like will manufacturing shift from China, or very specific questions about what should I do about my business. So in the first section, I'll try to answer some of these questions. I'll also share my views on the announcements made by the FM yesterday. And in the second session, I shall be talking about the financial measures that many organizations have implemented and the best financial practices that need to be implemented to survive and thrive in this pandemic. So I shared the agenda that I'll be talking about the emerging themes as well as the financial strategies to survive and thrive in this particular market. So the first theme is, that the world is moving from globalization to deglobalization. Okay, so while we know that India has announced plans for Make in India, what we anticipate is that most of the countries in this world are going to follow suit. And why is that? So if you see, the growth rates have fallen sharply or are projected to fall sharply in the year 2020. So if you look at the chart at the right, you will see that the world output in the current year is expected to degrow at the rate of 3%. So United States is expected to degrow by close to 6%, Europe by 7.5%, Japan by 5%, United Kingdom by 6.5%. So all these kind of degrowth rates is going to result in very high unemployment rates in most part of the world. Okay, so governments world over are likely to incentivize local manufacturing for job creations. Now, the World Trade Organization has estimated that the trade is going to degrow by close to 13 to 32% in 2020. So while there is a big opportunity for realizing the Make in India dream and reduce our import dependence on China and others, okay? But the whole point is that a lot of countries in the world are going to do the same thing. Now, in terms of this particular opportunity, what we've done is that we've tried to look at India's trade balance by country for the year 2019. So if you look at the table on the left-hand side, what it shows is that India had imports of $480 billion in the year 2019, and we ran a trade deficit of close to 157 billion USD dollars. Okay, and if you see, there are a lot of countries where we are running a trade deficit. So you can see that we're running a deficit of $51 billion with China, 16 with Switzerland, Hong Kong, China is again another 6, Korea is 11, Indonesia, again we're running a deficit of 11, Japan is 8, Australia is 8. And at the same time, there are countries such as Saudi Arabia and Iraq where we're running a trade deficit. But again, this is because of the oil imports. There is one country with whom we are running a trade surplus, which is United States of America. So maybe it doesn't make sense to actually reduce our imports with United States because there could be a retaliation. So we need to have a proper strategy in terms of identifying the countries from where we're going to reduce the imports. So the countries marked in green, according to me, are the right countries to target reduction of imports. On the right side, I have put in a table which gives an idea about the product categories, which are the major product categories as far as imports are concerned. So the first category is on oils. Okay, so we import a lot of oils, but we know that because of the following crude oil rates, this is expected to go down. But then there are other categories such as gems, precious metals, gold. So we import $60 billion of material products from various countries. So I think this is a huge opportunity for all of us. Electrical machinery equipments, again, the total import is 50 crores. Machinery is 44 crores. Organic chemicals, we import $20 billion of organic chemicals. Another surprising aspect is that we import plastic articles close to $15 billion, iron and steel of $12 billion, animal vegetable fats of 10 billion, optical, technical, and medical apparatus of close to 10 billion US dollars. So I think this is a huge opportunity for all the Indian manufacturers to actually go through this particular list, identify the countries from whom we are importing, identify the products, and I think there is a huge opportunity over here. So there are a lot of websites which give details of the importers from India. So according to me, what we should do is actually we should have maybe a website where the Indian importers can list down that, yeah, these are the items they used to import, but they would also like to explore some of the local suppliers as of now. And through those portals, I think a lot of Indian manufacturing companies can connect and identify opportunities of bringing down these particular imports. Now on this same website, maybe we can have banks providing their lending finance so that there are no issues in terms of finance is concerned. Similarly, I think another recommendation is that if while the government had actually export incentive schemes such as SEIS and MEIS for exports, now if India is able to bring down its imports, I think we can also have an incentive scheme through this particular opportunity. So according to me, this Made in India dream can actually be realized to a huge extent. And if we are able to focus on the import opportunities and through these measures try to bring down the imports, this itself could be a very huge opportunity. So I think we actually have our WhatsApp, etc., wherein we send messages that we should stop buying from China, etc. So I think a lot of Indian suppliers are also quite receptive right now in terms of developing local supply chains, and that's also quite essential for a lot of Indian companies because I think the international borders will take some times in terms of opening up, and so I feel there's a huge opportunity over there which can be explored further by a lot of Indian manufacturers. So now a second question which keeps getting asked in most of the webinars is that will we see a manufacturing shift from China? Yeah. So the answer is yes. So whatever happened in the month of February in China, there were a lot of MNCs who decided at that point of time that they would like to actually de-risk their supply chains. However, a study by Ipsos Research, which is a global research firm, has shown that a Japanese investment banker by the name of Nomura found out that 56 companies that relocated production from China between April 18 and 19, only 3 came to India. 2 went to Indonesia, 8 went to Thailand, 11 to Taiwan, and 26 to Vietnam. Now, in the current turmoil, China and Vietnam seem to be the only countries which are better positioned as compared to India and rest of the world. Hence, any immediate shift to India is ruled out. So if you look at Vietnam, the number of cases are in just hundreds. Another aspect is that MNCs look at ease of opening of the business as well as running of the business. While India is not being looked at favorably unless the government announces favorable measures and policy changes to attract foreign capital. So what I understand is that the FM is going to announce a lot of schemes. Unfortunately, I couldn't hear the FM today as we were having this particular dry run for this particular webinar. But I'm hopeful that over the next few days, the government of India will announce reform measures to take care of all the issues which a lot of these MNCs have in terms of land, in terms of labor, and many other issues which are hindrances right now. So to end, a big opportunity for the Indian manufacturers in the medium term, but this will call for a huge upgrade in manufacturing capabilities and the infrastructure. Now, my next slide is about during this particular crisis, what has been the response from the industry? So what I have put over here is that most of the industries have tried to put different filters while responding. Okay, and the first filter is what has been the impact of this pandemic on the industry. So in this particular slide, I've categorized the industries into two parts. The first set comprises of industries such as gyms, cinemas, malls, events, where the immediate impact has been very severe. Okay. Now the respective industries have applied a second filter as to now what is the outlook for this particular industry. Now industries such as gyms, cinemas, malls, according to me, will take a lot of time in terms of recovery. Okay. So first of all, the impact has been severe, and secondly, the outlook is also not great. Now most of these industries have applied a filter of liquidity. So liquidity is something which a corporate builds through its past profits or based on the debts which it can raise in the market. After applying the filter of what has been the immediate impact of the lockdown on the respective industry, what is the outlook for your respective industry and the liquidity position, a lot of industries have responded. So some of them have right-sized their team, some of them have changed their business model, and some of them also had to shut down their business. Now take the examples of gym. While CureFit is one particular uh, corporate which had physical gyms throughout India. Okay, and with the closure of gyms because of the lockdown, they had to take a lot of action as per reports in the press. While at the same time, they are working on a model of having an online model. So we see a lot of industries, especially who have been severely impacted, responding based on what has been the immediate impact, what could be the outlook. So in a webinar, whenever we get this particular question as to what should I do for my company, what we typically recommend is you apply these particular filters. First of all, find out, or you would already know, what has been the impact of this particular lockdown onto your industry. The second is, what is the outlook? So while there are a lot of companies which have been immediately impacted, post opening of the lockdown, the outlook seems to be much better. So that's the second filter to be applied. The third obviously is your liquidity. So how long can you actually run your particular company? So on the basis of these three aspects, a lot of companies have taken action. Now, if you look at the second vertical, companies where the outlook has been mentioned in amber, they have taken milder measures in terms of pay cuts and revamp of the business model. Third, there is a particular category where the impact has been low to medium, the outlook is quite positive, and these particular businesses have responded by conducting their business as usual or in an unusual manner. So the next theme I want to present is that while all of us are actually looking at starting our factories, our offices, One thing which we have learned from China is after opening up of the economy, China has still not gone back to its original level. So if you look at the chart on the right hand side, hotel occupancy is still at 50%. Consumer footfalls in the malls is at 50%. Flight passengers is close to 30%. So according to us, we will see a lot of slowdown in terms of demand, and the same will gradually improve. But at the same time, we see that there are a lot of industries where there'll be a fast track growth. These are respectively e-learnings, e-consults, physical and mental health services, hygiene at home and workplaces, and PPEs. Now, digital transformation will be the buzzword which everyone will be talking about. I have a separate slide on that. So as I said, demand will be slow for the coming quarters, and then it will gradually improve. So a lot of people have talked about various recovery curves. According to us, the recovery will be a W recovery. So we have seen the bottom. We will recover a bit, but maybe there could be some hiccups in between, and it will be some time by the time we come back to our original levels. So based on this particular outlook, what are the implications? So the implications will be, with the fall in demand, businesses will face pricing pressures. Innovation cost management will decide the eventual winners. So a lot of innovations are happening in various industries, and affordable pack sizes will be the growth drivers going forward. So there are a lot of companies which are not doing as well. So they'll be targets for attractive valuations and M&A activities. So right now, it's more important to be agile than wait for perfection. So I put a slide on the best practices which have been adopted by corporates in the last few months during the lockdowns. So most of the corporates have formed focus groups for managing their cash flows. There have been separate groups for managing the costs. So this, I think, has been implemented by most of the corporates. There are other focus groups which are ideating on new business opportunities and changes in the business model. Then obviously communication and connect with the customers, vendors. So some of the best corporates have maintained this communication and connect with its customers and vendors. There have been other groups which is focusing on Office 2. So what is this Office 2? Now Office 2 is the change in the way our office is going to work. Okay, so we see a lot of people working from home. We are seeing a lot of engagement with staff in a very different manner. We are seeing a lot of wellness initiatives being implemented by corporates. So all these things will come under Office 2, and a lot of corporates have focused on setting this Office 2 right. There are other focus groups which are planning restart of the operations of factories or their respective offices. Another good practice which has been adopted by a lot of corporate is industry representations to the government through their industry bodies or bodies such as FICCIs. A last point which I would like to state is some of the corporates are engaging with talent available in the market. In the current environment, especially with a lot of companies going through a lot of turmoil, there is a lot of talent which is available in the market. So companies which will be in a position to grow and survive are actively engaging with the talent in the market. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity that talent is available in the market, and a lot of corporates are investing their time in engaging with the talent which is available in the market. Now, before I go to the economic package, which was announced by the FM yesterday, let me just share a background on the economic package. So the background was that India's sovereign rating is at the lowest level of investment grade. Our fiscal deficit of the state and center is already high, and it's expected to worsen in the year FY21. So India has got a total workforce of 46.5 crores, out of which 20.5 crores are working in the agricultural sector, 6.4 crores are casual workers in industry and services. So when the government has announced a package, it has prioritized direct spends or cash outflows relating to food security and the Manrega scheme for the workforce which is engaged in agriculture or towards the casual workers. And the packages which have been announced for the MSMEs are more about providing funds or the liquidity through providing government guarantee, and hence the impact on the fiscal deficit will be deferred and limited on the basis of default. Now, because of this particular position, the position which has been adopted by the Indian government has to be commended, because on one side it has ensured that the needy section of the community gets direct benefits while a lot of corporates get liquidity. So on the right hand side, there is a chart. In this particular chart, we have shown what is the breakup of GDP by sector. So if you see, agriculture contributes 15% to India's GDP, industry contributes 31, and services 54. But if you look at the contribution of the workforce, you will actually see that in agriculture, 44% of the workforce is employed in agriculture, but the GDP which the sector is able to generate is just 15%. So the per capita income of this particular workforce is pretty low. If you come to the industry, 25% of the workforce is generating 31% of the GDP, while in services, 31% of the workforce is generating 54% of the GDP. So the per capita income seems to be pretty high over here. Now, with the Make in India scheme, what is going to happen is this particular workforce in the industry is going to increase substantially. So maybe a lot of workforce from the agricultural sector, where the per capita is low, will migrate into the industry. At the same time, we see a lot of service industries under severe pressure. So the best talent of the service industry can also move on to the industry space and have a particular proper balance. So now let me talk about some of the highlights of the package which were announced on day one. So a few days back, I was making this presentation and I had a slide that the fiscal response of India was actually the lowest in the world. And on Tuesday night, there was an announcement that the economic package from the Indian government would be at 10%, and this would be a game changer. So things are changing dramatically on a daily basis. So some of the schemes which were announced by the finance minister yesterday, one of the biggest one was to provide emergency collateral free credit line to a lot of MSMEs up to 20% of their entire outstanding amount as on 29th February 2020. And in the eligible borrowers are those with an outstanding up to 25 crores and a turnover of 100 crores. So this is a 4-year loan with a 12 months moratorium. While this scheme is pretty good, there are two things I would like to mention. That the limit of 100 crores for MSMEs seems to be very low. So if some particular corporate is going to invest, say, 20 crores in its fixed assets and obviously 30-40 crores in its working capital, this particular company will definitely have a turnover of 150 to 200 crores. So what we would recommend is that this particular slab of 100 crores for MSMEs should be relooked at and increased to 250 crores. Secondly, MSMEs which don't have any particular borrowing. Okay, so there are a lot of service companies which have not borrowed from the banks in the past, but still they face a lot of pressure in terms of paying for their expenses. So those have been excluded from this particular package. The second one is about subordinate debt for stressed MSMEs. So here the intention is actually to give funds to the promoters of the MSMEs so that they can use these funds and infuse equity into their respective companies. And this particular loan will be guaranteed by CGT MSE. So again, this is a good scheme, and this is applicable only for the stressed MSMEs. The third scheme is about government participating as a LP in those funds which invest in SME entities. And as per this particular fund, equity funding will be made available to those MSMEs with growth potential and viabilities. Some of the other benefits which were announced yesterday were the reduction of TDS rates by 25%. This again is a good measure because a lot of companies were applying to the income tax departments for a lower TDS certificate, and measures like this will definitely reduce tax refunds for the next year. Another big measure which was announced was a liquidity infusion for DISCOMs to pay off the GENCOs. This also is a very good measure, but this has to be supplemented with reforms for the DISCOM. Another measure which was implemented was 75 1,000 crores liquidity scheme for the NBFCs, HFCs, and MFIs. This again will help the MSME sector. Again, there were a lot of other announcements yesterday. So I'll talk just about a few of them. So MSME receivables from the governments, this will be released in 45 days. This is a very good initiative, but according to us, this has to be done on a recurring basis. Another scheme was global tenders will be disallowed up to 200 crores. I think this will help in terms of our move towards a self-reliant India. So I talked about the revised MSME classification. So here the turnover cap for the MSMEs has been restricted at 100 crores. So we know a lot of MSMEs who have crossed 100 crores. Hopefully the government will come out with a scheme for a lot of corporates with turnover of above 100 crores, or they'll revise this particular definition of MSMEs from 100 to 250 crores. So I have covered the first section, which talks about the emerging themes. Now I'll get into the financial strategies to survive and thrive in this particular scenario. So if you remember, in the first week of April, uh, a lot of webinars were held. So what I'm trying to do over here is that this is just a recap of phase one. So at that point of time, we had asked a lot of corporates to prepare various scenarios. So in this particular slide, you can see a scenario A where the corporate is uh, forecasting that maybe the lockdown will be for 3 months, and after that they'll operate at 50% capacity, and the balance 6 months at 100% capacity. Similarly, there's a scenario B, and there's a scenario C, which is more severe. On the left hand side, there are various plans. So what happens if there is a cost reduction of just 10%? There's another plan B, which states cost reduction at 25, and there's a plan C, which talks about a cost reduction of 50%. Now, at this point of time, the most likely scenario is scenario B, where we are looking at a lockdown of 3 months and maybe 50% capacity for 9 months. So this particular scenario gives you an idea about the runway a particular company has. And according to us, a company needs to have a runway of at least 9 to 12 months to survive during the coming year. So again, this is a recap of phase one. So I think the whole premise that a lot of costs are fixed got challenged. So a lot of companies looked at all of their cost. In fact, manpower cost was a very big cost. So they looked at increments, they looked at incentives, they looked at grade-wise pay cuts. There were a lot of separations in many companies. We learned about the force majeure clause, and this was activated, and we tried to negotiate rentals with our landlords and many other costs. The whole concept of having a large office was questioned. So we have heard about IT companies questioning this requirement of a large office and moving to a work from home kind of a model on a permanent basis. Companies are trying to work on a model of operating with a leaner structure. A lot of companies offered discounts to its debtors for faster collections. At the same time, they negotiated discounts with their vendors before making the payments. So again, this is a recap of phase one. So a lot of companies have obviously deferred their capital expenditure. They've taken advantage of all the loan and tax deferment schemes which have been announced by the government. A lot of follow-ups are happening for their tax refunds. A lot of bankers provided a 10% extra limit.
Mr. Gautam, can we, just a second, we can't hear you right now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so this slide is again a recap of the phase one activities. So a lot of companies have deferred their capital expenditure. They have tried to take all the advantage of the loan and tax deferment schemes which have been announced by the government. A lot of them have followed up for their tax refunds. A lot of bankers have extended 10% extra working capital limits to the corporates. So most of the corporates which were looking forward to funds have availed of this particular facilities. Discounting of invoices, especially of AAA rated clients, has been largely done by a lot of MSMEs. Another thing has happened is that they have reviewed all their non-productive assets and tried to monetize the same. So finally, the theme has been incur only those costs that give you a ROI. So now I'll get into the phase 2. We are about to open up our factories, our offices, our business. So our advice will be to not over leverage. So if you see at the performance of companies, a lot of companies which had excess leverage have not done well. The stock market is rewarding only those companies which are able to generate a lot of free cash flow. So what we are recommending to a lot of our clients is to move away from the ROC model to a free cash flow model. I'll explain this model in a minute. Now, there will be a fundamental issue with the business if it cannot generate cash. In many of the organizations, we see that the profit is blocked in higher inventory and receivables. This will further aggravate your cash flow issues. And please remember, as your top line drops in the current year, your working capital should be released. So we should not be operating in an environment where to grow our business, we constantly require working capital. That was the scenario when the business was increasing. Now, most of the companies are projected to have a fall in their top line. So this itself will see a fall in the working capital. So on the right hand side, I have given an example. Uh, so the first row is about the ROC. This used to be a way of measuring performance of a particular company. So it used to take its profit before interest and tax and check what's the investment which has been made in fixed assets and working capital. So in this particular example, the company has got profits of say 20, investment is 60 plus 40 is 100. So the business is giving a return of 20%. Now in the free cash flow on capital employed model, what we are actually saying is that to your PBIT, you also need to add the changes in your working capital. So we've given a scenario over here where your profit is say come down, it's come down to 50% and your working capital has increased by 5. So in this particular scenario, the free cash flow which you have will be just 5 and you'll be generating a return of just 5%, which will be far below what the banks are charging you. So there was an earlier concept of EVA where we used to charge only the cost of capital for the working capital. I think that particular model, especially during this testing times, should be challenged, and we will encourage all the corporates to reduce their working capital and generate cash from there. So if you see the third scenario where profits are at 50%, but working capital reduces by 15. Now in this particular example, the business is able to generate a return of 29%. So we encourage all the corporates to focus on their working capital and focus on the cash generated by the business rather than just looking at PBIT. Now, post the lockdown, I think what happened was when the lockdown was implemented in the last week of March, there were a lot of corporates which were planning for their usual month-end sales, and this was the year end. So there's a lot of FG which is lying with the corporates. There's a lot of work in progress which is lying with the corporates. So that needs to be immediately sold. So if you've got a FG, please get in touch with your customers, ensure that you prioritize sale of FG. If you have the RMWIP, ensure it's converted to FG and you sell. At the same time, what we see is that commodity prices have fallen throughout the world. So you would also be carrying a lot of high cost RM. So use this particular opportunity to liquidate your RM by offering competitive rates instead of holding to this high cost RM. Another thing which we are advising our clients is to offer competitive prices to your customers, but insist on better payment terms. Until the lockdown, this used to be completely the opposite. A lot of corporates used to focus just on the top line and they used to compromise on the payment terms. But right now, it's okay to sacrifice margins to get money in your bank. Extending open credit to B and C grade customers may be high risk because defaults are expected to rise. In terms of credit policy, what we're saying is that you need to collect in advance from your B2C clients, offer credit to A-rated clients and the governments with credit controls in place, partial advance from B-rated clients, and ensure that you collect full advance from the C-rated clients. Another measure which needs to be implemented is Earlier, sales incentives were given on achievement of sales target. Now, the sales incentives should be paid only when the money is collected from the customers. I talked about digital transformation in my earlier slides. Now, the way corporates are working, the way employees are working has completely changed. So we get a lot of questions as to I'm not able to figure out what my employees are doing. So I think this is the right time to embrace technology to improve efficiencies and cost. So we already know about video conferencing solutions like Zoom or the one which we are using today. We have advised a lot of our customers to move to on the cloud accounting and reporting systems. So a lot of MSMEs were earlier working with the Tally system, which was not on the cloud. So a lot of these companies have now moved on the cloud, either with Tally or with some other accounting systems, which can be operated on the cloud. There's a lot of paper workflow which happens in company. So by embracing technology, we can reduce the paperwork approvals by workflow applications. Inventory management systems. This again is very important because it's important to keep a very close watch on your inventory aging and liquidate old stocks. There are a lot of corporates who are not able to figure out what is their inventory, what is the inventory aging, and they keep on looking at their P&L and they say that I'm making profits, but most of these profits are blocked in inventory. So you need to have an inventory management system which helps you monitor your inventory and take corrective action. Another important aspect is that you need to monitor your standard cost and your actual cost. This can happen only if you invest in a robust inventory management system. So again, technology will play a very important role over here. Now, there are a lot of CRM systems in the market. There are a lot of HR apps which have to be embraced by corporates so that they can keep a track online as to what is their sales team doing, what are their employees doing. So it becomes very important for a lot of corporates to embrace technology to improve efficiencies and cost. Now, I did not talk about digital marketing, but there are a lot of corporates who still have not adopted digital marketing as a way of life. So there was a recent report which was released by CRISIL, which says that rest of the mediums of advertisements are expected to degrow by 25% in the coming year, and only digital marketing sector is expected to grow. So I would encourage all the manufacturing companies to embrace this particular digital marketing where you're able to measure your returns on your investments as compared to the traditional medias of advertisements. Now, since a lot of these corporates are looking at exports, it's very important to invest in the basics, have your website in place, an updated website in place, have a lot of social media activities. So obviously, I think you need to get in touch with a digital marketing expert to implement this particular measures. So a lot of corporates have a budgeting process just to determine their top line and profitability targets. Now it's very difficult to have say budgets for a year. So what we recommend is we can have a 3-month kind of a budget. And this whole budgeting exercise is to plan your cash flows rather than forecasting your top line and your profitability targets. Another measure which you need to do is to lower your break-even point by converting fixed cost into variable cost. So we see that a lot of outsourcing models are going to flourish. A lot of gig resources are going to be used by a lot of corporates. Another thing to survive and thrive in this market is to focus just on your core competencies. This is not the right time to diversify. Have few product lines and simplify your business. Apply for a lower TDS certificate and ensure your MSME license in place is again something which did not require any elaborations. So in this particular environment, the customer will ask for better prices. So it's very important to get your costing right to offer competitive pricing. We see that there are a lot of corporates who are not clear about their cost structure. What are their variable cost? What are their fixed cost? So it's very important to get your costing right so that you never sell below your variable cost. Another model which we have seen which works pretty well is when your supply chain team works very closely with your design team, because that's the only way to redesign products, get your product cost down. That's a very winning formula for competitive pricing. Another thing which we recommend is for companies to monitor their free cash flows at the division level, at the product level, service level, geographies, customer, so that you know what has been the contribution of various segments for your free cash flows. Again, a good system will help you in terms of monitoring all this. Another point I want to stress on is that you need to assess the financial position of your competitors to anticipate his moves. And the last point is that be ready for M&As as valuation becomes attractive. So let me talk about the startup industry. So a lot of startups have got impacted, especially those who were chasing the just the top line. So we feel that anyone with less than 12 months of runway is at a very high risk. Right now, it's more important to increase runway rather than valuation. So a lot of the startups will have to work on their financial model, focusing on the path to profitability to increase their runtime. And in terms of funding, uh, maybe you'll have to go back to your existing investor because he understands your business, he understands your model. But if the existing investor is not willing to put in additional fund, then you can reach out to other potential investors who understand your business model and have been in touch with you in the past. If this doesn't work as well, then you can reach out to the rest. But remember, the fundraising outcomes will take longer times than usual. In the current environment, we see that even unicorns are struggling for survival. There have been restrictions on new investments from China through the auto route, and this has further increased the uncertainty. However, we see an opportunity for consolidation among the startups, which will be driven by the investors. This might also be a good time for strategic buyouts by large companies. So say if you're a fintech startup, there could be a large bank who might be keen on your business model and might buy you out. At the same time, we hear about Reliance raising huge sums of money. So if you got a good business model, again, you could look at larger companies who could buy out your business or invest in your business. So that's it from me. Thanks a lot for your patient hearing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gautam. There have been actually so many questions coming in, and because we want to keep the time aspect in mind, I'm going to dive right in. So the first question to you has been that while you have covered the financial strategies for corporates, what will be your advice for managing personal finances?
Thanks, Shivani. So relating to personal finance, I think we'll have to again go back to the basics. So many times our financial advisors have advised us a lot of things, and I think the first thing is to take a Mediclaim policy for yourself and your family. That is step number one. The second step will be to have a term cover for you, because with a term cover, able to see me?
Yes.
So
Just
because
the
with a
screen
term cover, you can have a maximum coverage at a very minimal cost. The third advice is to reduce all your discretionary spends. Okay, so this lockdown has taught us that you don't require a lot of money for your basic needs, but it's your lifestyle which takes a lot of your money. And when the economy opened up in China, a lot of consumers went for something called as revenge shopping. Okay, so they went out and spent a lot of money. So one advice will be not to actually go for this type of spending and reduce your discretionary fund. The other is something which a lot of financial advisors anyway have been talking about, that it's very important to build emergency fund for you. Okay, so estimate what your 6 months expenses are and put that in a fixed deposit or a liquid fund, so that if there is a crisis, then you don't have to go to any bank for any particular loan. That emergency loan is sufficient to take care of your requirement. And then once you've taken care of these particular basics, you have an insurance for yourself, Mediclaim, term loan, you bring down your discretionary spends, you have a 6 months emergency fund allocated, then you can start focusing on building a portfolio for you. I think building a portfolio, etc., will take a lot of time. That will require a separate sessions, but yeah, I'll say that these are some of the measures which have to be implemented to take care of your personal finances.
Okay, great. What is your take in terms of investing in the stock markets today?
So I think you can invest in the stock market only if you're a long-term investor. Okay, if you're a person who gets worried if the market goes down by 5%, okay, then stock market is not the right investment vehicle for you. So there's a lot of uncertainty today. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know whether when the vaccine is going to come for COVID. We don't know how the companies are going to perform. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. So I'll say that investing in the stock market is only for those who have that particular risk appetite. Okay, so having said that, markets are quite low today, and so only those guys who have taken a very contrary approach as far as the stock market is concerned have made money in the market. Generally, the larger community, they start investing when the markets are at their all-time high, and when the market goes down, everybody tries to stay away from the particular market. Okay, so a lot of guys who have a contrary strategy have done pretty well. But before you invest in the stock market, I think it's very important to take care of all your other needs, which I explained to you. Have an emergency fund, have a debt portfolio. Once you feel that you are actually secure with your finances and you are in a position to take risk, only those persons should actually invest in the stock market.
Okay. The economic package announced by the government seems to be based on Make in India theme and for manufacturing companies. Will there be a separate package for distressed service companies?
So that's a very interesting question. So I don't think there'll be another package for the service industry in general, but there could be some packages for specific distress services such as real estate or airlines. So even otherwise, I think there are some service companies such as the ones in technology or DTH, OTT, healthcare, banking, which are doing pretty okay. And so we also expect some of the manufacturing companies to do well. Now everybody has forgotten about live sports. So I believe that in some time we'll also have live sports, which is a very big driver of ad revenues, and we might see even the revival of IPL in empty stadiums. Okay, so I think the service companies will have to pivot their services or business model around the sectors which are expected to do well. So that should be their strategy for the service company. I don't think the government is going to come out with any specific package for the service industry. And so what I believe is that if the manufacturing sector starts doing well, that itself will give a lot of opportunities to the service companies in terms of extending their services.
So this is a very interesting question. If the gentleman says, if Gautam looks into his crystal ball, how does he see India in 2021?
2021 is the year after that, the year after this.
Yes.
So I see a very bright future for India because so if you go back to the year 1991, okay, we had a milder crisis, I'll say, but at that point of time, our forex reserves had come down to just a couple of weeks, and a call was taken at that point of time. There was no other option, and after that call, we saw that India grew. Okay, in the next 2 decades, we had fantastic growth. In comparison, the last decade has been, I'll say, lower than expectations. Now, again, we are in a situation where there's a crisis. And I think India tends to react pretty well whenever there is a crisis. And so some of the measures which have been announced by FM yesterday. So a week back, we were saying that the economic package of India has been the lowest in the world. Okay, so in just couple of days, we have a package which is close to 10% of the GDP. I think this could be a game changer, and we have a lot of MSMEs with their Jugadu style of working, their style of giving returns with minimal capital. Okay, so that will actually, I think, create a new model for the entire world. And if we could implement some of these policies of import substitutions, the Make in India scheme, I hope that the government announces good measures for land, labor, litigation, and so according to me, while 2020 we might see growth coming down. Okay, so I'll not be surprised if we don't have any growth in 2020. But if we are able to implement the right measures, I'll not be surprised if we again go back to our 6 to 7% growth rate in 2021. Again, driven by reforms in the agricultural sector, where we see a lot of middlemen making the money, but not the farmers. So I see the agricultural sector getting corrected with a lot of reforms. A lot of people moving from agriculture to industry, the manufacturing industry, which I'm hopeful will do pretty well, which will also create a lot of opportunities for the service sector. And I'm pretty hopeful that whenever there's a crisis, India has done pretty well. And this is a once in a lifetime kind of a opportunity for us. Otherwise, there have always been things like there's a rating agency which will bring down your rating, etc. And we have never taken any dramatic measures. I think there are no choices today. Okay, while the rating agencies might downgrade the sovereign rating of India, today there's a fire and that needs to be doused. And so whatever steps have been taken by the Indian government have been the right steps. And I'm quite hopeful that this will help us in terms of reaching new highs, not only in the year 2021, but even the year after that. So if you look at the China
Yeah.
story, okay, so they have ignored all this rating agencies and they have done what is right for their country. Okay, so I think India is going through a similar phase, and post implementation of these measures, we'll see a India which is self-sufficient and which is doing exceptionally well.
Mhm. How do you choose between having resources for business continuity for today against accelerated growth post-COVID?
No, I think a lot of resources which are being spent today, okay, for business continuity, a lot of these groups are doing real path-breaking work. So they are not only looking at investing in business continuity, which is the need of the hour, but they are also trying to build a company, okay, with new business model. Okay, so according to me, that will be a very big game changer. And so the only advice which I give to the companies is that don't over leverage, which I have shared in my slides before. Ensure that your business is able to generate a lot of free cash flow. So let's not get into this situation of whether I should be investing in business continuity or people or growth. Okay, once your business starts generating a lot of cash, it will take care of all your issues. And it's a good problem to have, that you are generating cash and then you need to decide where do you need to invest, rather than being in a situation where your business is not generating cash at all.
Is there any scope for a company which has just started in ed tech sector?
Ed tech.
Yes.
So obviously, I think e-learning is one industry which will do pretty well. Okay, so we have seen all the kids sitting at home. So after a long time, we finally come to know about their teachers and what do they actually learn from all these online coaches. So I think the education sector, especially with the use of technology, has a great future. You need to ensure that you create content which is quite relevant, uh, content which makes people learn a lot. Okay, so otherwise we have a lot of government schools, colleges where we know what has been the state of affairs as far as education is concerned. So if you can build a ed tech platform where people can come and upgrade their skills or practically learn about new ways of learning, that will be a fantastic kind of opportunity. So if you have the right business model, if you have the content which is unique, so I think that's what happened with Byju's, that the promoter himself used to actually teach a lot of students, and the students used to come back and say your teaching is fantastic. So if you're able to actually develop that particular content which can be useful for the Indian public at large, then I think it's a fantastic sector to invest in. And obviously the right time, because a lot of resistance which was there in the earlier times, that this is a different model and it's difficult to embrace. Now everyone has actually moved on to the digital platform. So according to me, it's the right time to invest in edtech. Yeah, there could be some issues in terms of raising funds, but if your model is right, then I think there is always capital available for the right model.
So we're actually having so many questions and we're almost out of time. So I'm going to ask you one last question. What are your views on the sudden changes in labor laws, and how will it impact manpower that predominantly engages migrant populations?
So I'm not very sure what are the changes which have been announced as far as labor laws are concerned today. So we expect a lot of announcements to come in the coming days. So we see that a lot of our workforce today is casual workers. Okay, so very few workers are on the direct payrolls of the company, and that is because of the various rules and regulations which have to be followed by the companies. And so there are provisions such as, if you have more than 100 workers, and if the company is to be shut down, or if some workers have to be removed, then you need to take permissions from various levels. And that's the reason why a lot of corporates have taken up these people on a casual kind of a basis. So I assume that in terms of labor reforms, the government maintains a balance. Okay, because it's very important that we provide the required safety to all our workers. It's important that we pay them the minimum wages, and we take care of our workers. But at the same time, I don't think corporates should be focusing a lot on just compliance of these labor laws, because the focus of businesses should be in terms of growing their business, and not looking at the notices which have been sent to them on a daily basis on some very old kind of a laws. So I'm hopeful that the government will come up with labor laws which will kind of balance the requirements of the workers, and at the same time ensure that corporates, instead of taking casual laborers, okay, take all these laborers as their permanent employees and provide them the benefits that they deserve.
Okay, so there are been like so many more questions, but unfortunately because of time we need to stop right now. But please feel free to reach out to the team, to Mr. Gautam, if you want to take off any conversations offline. I would like to thank all of you once again for staying back to the end, and thank you, Mr. Gautam, for such an insightful session.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. Thanks for attending the session.